We're here today to talk through Truckee Fire Protection District's 2025 Defensible Space Program, our work plan, and then some updates on some resources we have for the community. So with that, we'll be talking through defensible space inspections, home hardening, green waste disposal options, education and assistance, our community wildfire prevention grants, and some fuel reduction projects. All the information we're covering on these slides is available on our website, so check out truckeefire.org, particularly the DSpace link that we have provided here below. And if you have any one-on-one questions that we don't cover during this presentation, use our dspace@truckeefire.org email to get in touch with us. So quick intro, I'm Eric Hornvet. I'm our wildfire prevention manager here at Truckee Fire. So I manage that wildfire protection tax measure T that's funding all of our district's wildfire prevention efforts. Our team's overseen by our fire chief and our board, as well as our Measure T Citizens Oversight Committee. We have three other full-time employees, our Forester Dylan, Maria, who's here today, our wildfire prevention specialist, Brittany, who's here today, our wildfire prevention admin, and then our whole team who's listening in as well, our defensible space specialists, which will be the ones you all will be most likely to see and engage with in your community as we're conducting defensible space inspections. So before we get into our defensible space program and those, I really wanted to take time just to educate on a little. I think most people in our community have heard me talk at one event or another and really understand where we're at on the side of forestry, right? Our forests are overly dense. We have a lot of fuel. Our fire suppression system can be overwhelmed, and our community can be really vulnerable to wildfires we've seen throughout history. The stats in our state are definitely against us right now, and things seem to continue to get worse. So we're here. Give me 1 second here. So we're here to try to be a part of the solution to get some wildfire risk back in our communities. So to help describe this, there's been this study done called the Community Fire Disaster Sequence. And really what it comes out to is that outcome chart on the right is destruction or resilience, and the amount of effort and action we puts in dictates where we get to. So we have these environmental conditions, right? We have the cyclical periods of dry weather, right? Typically Truckee sees little to no precipitation from late May all the way through October and November snows. So we always get these dry fuel conditions. We couple that with hot weather. We get these dry, strong winds, sometimes those red flag days. And when you have dry fuels, topography, and winds all align, it is a recipe for disaster. And in those type of events, when you have extreme wildfire conditions, the entire firefighting force of California and the Western United States can become overwhelmed with multiple incidents going on all over the state, and then a rapidly spreading wildfire that compounds into this community conflagration. So when this suppression system gets overwhelmed, we got to choose. Do we want vulnerable structures, right, that have vegetation all around them, not a proper done defensible space or home hardening, or do we want ignition resistant structures where we're managing these hazards around our homes proactively and we're setting ourselves up for the outcome on the bottom right? Is a community that survives, most home ignitions are eliminated, what resources we do have available can be successful in protecting life, property, and environment, and we have a community that's resilient to fire disaster. To dive in a little bit deeper into how homes ignite during wildfires, this is 3 ways. It's really, really important to really focus in on 3 of these, but we're really going to focus in on the cause on the left. So 90% of homes during wildland fires are igniting from embers. So think of that like a snowstorm, a blizzard, a hailstorm of small embers, small pieces of hot flying material. They would accumulate on your roof, hit your siding, land next to your home, and they create this ignition pathway, right? From the pine needles to the landscaping to the house. So by us getting defensible space in zone 0 right, we can break up that ember ignition piece, and then with proper vegetation management, so just right plants, right place with the right spacing, we can break up this direct flame contact and radiant heat process as well. So to dig into just a little bit of basic fire science is I want everyone to nerd out on these fire triangles. If you look at this triangle on the left, we have the general fire triangle. These are the 3 basic components you need to just have fire, right? You need oxygen, you need fuel, and you need heat. On the right, we look at the fire behavior triangle. These are the three basic factors that exacerbate, intensify, make fire worse. And that's hot, dry, windy weather. That's fuel, right? Continuous, dead fuel. Topography, steep slopes, box canyons, those type of things. What's really cool with both of these triangles is that if you remove one of these elements, you can generally totally reduce that risk of exposure or increasing exposure for wildfire. So we can totally manage fuel. And by managing fuel, we can remove that element of these triangles and not have fire and not drive increased fire behavior. So we're really going to be focusing on fuel because that's the vegetation and combustible items around the home that encompasses defensible space. Cool. So to talk more into our defensible space program at a high level is that we're available year round, usually starting in late May through October for free defensible space evaluations. So if you're interested in that one-on-one education at your property, if you want to be there or if you can't be there and you want to give us access to your property, you can go to our website, truckeefire.org/dspace, pick a date and a time, and schedule an inspection with us. This is really great. You can understand what hazards exist on your property, how to reduce the risk, and all the programs we have available in our community to help. To go above and beyond just this request for service, we've also set a 3-year inspection goal. So what that means is across our whole fire district, we're inspecting just about every house on a 3-year cycle, which is about 5,000 properties a year. Going into 2025, we're actually starting re-inspections. So since Measure T was passed, we've been working 2022, 3, and 4, really driving that initial education, initial evaluation, and working with our communities on grappling with these changing defensible space and home hardening initiatives and trying to get to a state of resilient. So for 2025, we'll be re-inspecting all the neighborhoods and properties that were inspected in 2022. We're really using our software and data to make sure that we don't miss anything. So we'll be grabbing all those any gaps or areas that we missed in our first 3-year cycle. And then we're also working really hard this year more than ever before to support and verify and work with our various HOAs to make sure that we're aligning community standards, Truckee fire standards, and state standards with how we conduct inspections even at the HOA level. Here's just a broad overview of our fire district. On the west side, you'd see Cisco Grove, all the way over towards Donner Lake as you're coming into the center of the map. And then our fire district extends all the way over to that tiny little island of Floreston, just east of Glenshire. So we're pretty spread out geographically, but we'll be working through a lot of our communities this year. So the target neighborhoods that we'll be inspecting every developed and undeveloped lot in for community defensible space is going to be the southern third of Glenshire. This is generally all of the homes south of Glenshire Drive to the Donington area. We'll be re-inspecting Olympic Heights, Prosser Lakeview and Lakeview Estates, Armstrong Tract, and all of Donner Lake, northwest and south shore communities. So these are the areas that we'll be in. If you live in these areas, we're encouraging you to take action now, kind of learn what needs to be done for defensible space, hopefully set us up that we can give you that thumbs up compliant report, and then you can move on to home hardening or other initiatives that are important for you. So how do we conduct our inspections? This is really important. So in these target areas, we really only have the public right of way. So our inspectors go out typically in teams, groups of 4, teams of 2. We drive the community, we get out of our vehicles, we have our tablets, and we walk the roadways. So our reasonable access or where we can inspect from is from those public access areas, our streets, our sidewalks, and then that reasonable access to the front door. So think of the same way that a delivery driver would be. We conduct our inspections from the road, walk the pathway to the front door, knock on the door, do our best to positively engage with our residents. We love it when people are here and we can walk the property and talk with you about defensible space. And then we end it with a door hanger that we can use to access the report and get some more information. The other option is requested inspections. Typically, these give us 360 access to the home, and ideally, we're meeting on these requested inspections with a property owner or a representative. We have a lot of different reasons we do these requested or scheduled inspections, everything from educational, I want to know the info, hey, I want to access that new home hardening rebate and I need that full inspection so I can understand what qualifies. We do a lot of complaints, and we actually encourage that if you have a complaint next door to you, that the way you solve that is by scheduling an inspection with us. It's one of the best ways to resolve complaints. We can meet, we can educate, and we can get a lot of work done. We also do a lot of inspections for insurance related issues. And then as well, we're doing a lot of enforcement on defensible space for property sale, construction, short-term rentals, and others. New for 2025 is that before we do an inspection, we actually have the ability for property owners that want it, they can give Truckee Fire temporary access to their full property. So if we're inspecting your area, you're not sure if you're going to be there, but you really want to understand what work needs to be done around your full property to protect your home, you can go into the property permissions aspect of your report, give the fire district right of entry just temporarily, just for a few months or for this fire season only, and then get that full comprehensive report. This is totally optional. We're leaving it up to the property owners that want to opt in on this to opt in on it. And we'll be sending out some communications about 2 weeks before we get into your inspection area with some better instructions if you'd like to take advantage of a full access evaluation. So with that, how do we communicate that we just have recently done an inspection? These are the two things that you'll see. The most common one is the one on the left, that defensible space inspection notice door hanger. So we use this door hanger when we've completed inspection to let you know we've been there. We give you a checklist of reviewing your report, completing the action items, following up with us to letting us know the progress you've made, and then of course working with your neighbors to make sure the whole community is as safe as possible. Uniquely to access your code, it's all web-based, and we have an access code that's unique to your property. If you don't open this report, a few weeks later, you might get this friendly looking postcard. So greetings from Truckee Fire. This is just to make sure that, we recognize a lot of second homeowners here. They may not get that door hanger. Well, at least a couple weeks later, if they have not logged online, we do our best to engage with them with a targeted postcard to their mailing address wherever they live in the United States. So a couple different ways you might see us communicating our inspections. Talking communications, here's some other work that we do. We do events like this, trying to engage our community with good info meetings through our Firewise community meetings, HOAs meetings, but we're also working through our website, newspaper, radio, social media, public events, and more. And then as we move into this year and beyond, we're really trying to improve our communication. So we're going to be working on doing some pre-inspection emails. So for all of our community members, especially those that are Firewise leaders or HOA representatives or staff, we're really going to be leaning on you to help share some of our communications. We're going to be reaching out typically about 2 weeks prior to coming into your neighborhood to say, hey, Truckee Fire is coming in for evaluations. We're going to be starting your neighborhood approximately 2 weeks from now. Let's work together to try to engage residents, positively walk around the properties, and protect our communities as best as we can. We're also going to be trying to use our inspection software more than ever before. So new to our inspection software is that as we make more connections in our community, we gain more names, more emails, and we can send focused, brief communications through our software that just lets you drive this process a little bit more. What we also hope to do now that we have 85% of our homes in Firewise communities is to do a post-inspection email. Again, Firewise leaders and HOA reps really tune in here. This is going to be tailor-made by Maria and I, and we're going to be summarizing our findings, compliance, progress, top remaining defensible space and home hardening priorities to work on, and really giving you a little bit more information to use as a Firewise community or HOA to keep connecting and driving more action, more progress, and keep these conversations going. All right, now into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of defensible space. So we define defensible space into 3 areas. It's zone 0, zone 1, and zone 2. The slide you're looking at now is zone 0. This is really that first 5 feet around your house. So think 5 feet around the walls of your house, as well as underneath, and 5 feet from any decks, stairs, or porches. So it's kind of that little bit bigger of a building envelope. What's important to know with this zone is that we're really looking for ember resistance and non-combustibility. So we want this zone to be as dialed, as clean, as non-combustible as possible. Post-fire inspection reports and then laboratory science has said that if you get zone 0 right, you double the chance of survival of every home in these wildland urban intermixed neighborhoods. So it's a really important zone. The codes and laws have been changing in this zone over the last handful of years, and it really is shifting towards hardscaping, right? Rock, mulches, pavers, concrete, removing any sort of easily ignitable material like pine needles, leaves, combustible mulch, and bark further away from the home, and then really being cautious of what landscaping do you have in this area. If we have any landscaping in zone zero, it really needs to be really purposeful. It needs to be really resilient. It needs to be watered. It needs to be well spaced, and it typically needs to be non-woody. So, not a dogwood planted in zone zero, but more of maybe some annual bulbs or some really herbaceous green plants. So we're really trying to get this zone right. So to dig into some zone zero insights here is that talking about this being the most important zone, we're really going to lean into what we see. And most of the issues we see are maintenance, right? It's really getting that proper tree limbing done so that tree branches are 10 feet away from your decks, your siding, your roof, or your chimney. Looking at what type of vegetation and shrubs do you have in this zone zero space? Can we move those further away from the home, either translocate them or remove them? Can we shift towards a lighter landscape area in this zone, maybe raking back combustible mulches, bark, wood chips, replacing it with rock or pavers? Can we just manage that year-round cycle of leaves and pine needles that fall on our roofs and our ground? It's really important to remove that fine fuel that's easily ignited by embers. And then some of the tougher ones are combustible storage, right? Patio furniture, lumber, firewood, those type of things. So it's really important that we treat all of this as fuel, like we talked about earlier. It's not just about managing the vegetation anymore, but when we're in zone zero, we need to look at all of these fuel sources and make sure that we're getting them further from the structure where we can. Getting a little bit further from the structure, we go into zone one. This is that lean, clean, and green zone. So as you're working on your property, within 30 feet, really think, hey, am I getting good spacing between my shrubs and between my trees? Am I pruning all the dead material out of the plants? Am I keeping it irrigated or just in a nice, healthy, resilient green state? It's really important to get this transitional zone right. Think about proper spacing and to keep it lean. We'll talk more on this slide later, but we mean this positively, but our forests are extremely overgrown. And I think our reality of what is a healthy forest and a proper density of trees in our forest and in our communities, is not right where it needs to be. We need larger, more well-spaced trees in our community. So we definitely work with our community. We're not asking to moonscape. We're not asking to remove everything. But we do need to grapple with this concept of some tree spacing. So actually having branch tip to branch tip canopy spacing and thinning our forests so that we can have healthy forests and well-protected communities. As we move into zone two, that 30 to 100-foot zone, this is where we can be a little bit more lenient and work with people. We're really looking for reduced fuels. So back to some general, remove the dead, prune trees 6 feet up off the ground. Don't allow that ladder fuel effect where shrubs connect to small trees that connect to large trees, and just working your best to just reduce that fuel, reduce that continuity. So to summarize all that up into our top findings, we're going to pull some stats. Since we're using a great fire inspection software now, we have a lot of great data and insights that we can use. So this stat is for all the Truckee fire areas except Tahoe Donner. They manage their own defensible space program. But this encompasses over 11,000 properties and over 15,000 individual inspections. Overall, we found about 10% compliance. This means that 9 out of 10 homes have more work to do, and it's really important work that we do as a community. So take this on as a positive challenge. Let's all work together, get defensive, and protect our communities. So some of the top defensible space findings that we found, as you can see going back to the don't be dense, thin your trees sign, is that we need to get a little bit more spacing between our trees. A lot of our trees just need limbing, right? That easier work where you're just removing limbs either away from your house or up above the ground. I'm really hoping as a community that we can get this vegetation and zone zero button off of our top 10 findings, right, with how critical it is to get zone zero right. I'm hoping that we're really reducing the amount of vegetation and pine needles and things we find in zone 0. And then we still have a lot of work we can do around shrub spacing and ladder fuels. Going over into dead vegetation, right? It's really important we get this one right. But if you have a lot of leaves and needle litter on the ground, it's time to reduce that. Generally, we're fine with about 1 inch in zone 1 and up to 3 inches deep of pine needles as you get out in zone 2, 30 to 100 feet. Dead trees are going to become important, that we keep removing these as a community. Our stats show us that about 1 in 6 properties still have a remaining dead tree. And then if you live in an area with a lot of grasses and weeds, it's important that we just maintain that throughout the fire season by mowing it or weed whacking it down to a height of 4 inches or less. A challenging one for many members of our community is firewood. Now, we really need firewood during fire season, so typically June through October, to be stored 30 feet away from any structure or as far away from your house as you can get it if you're on a smaller lot. The days of saying we can keep firewood in zone 0 and cover it with a ignition resistant tarp isn't quite the reality with what we're seeing with these fire spreads and winds and issues. So we really need to think about, can we seasonally shift this stored combustible fuel away from our home during fire season? Quick summary of programs that are going to support a lot of the defensible space efforts, and we'll dig into a lot of these in a little bit more detail, are 1, free defensible space evaluations, free green waste pickup, our 6-yard dumpster rebate program, Firewise Workday dumpster program, $2,000 home hardening rebate, our new reflective address sign program, and coming later in the summer will be our pilot dead tree fund program. So to dig into green waste, I like to call this the green waste buffet. We've been doing a lot of work statewide and comparing programs to other partners, and I can say that I think Truckee has one of the best green waste disposal programs available in all the state. There are so many opportunities to get this material away from your house, and you can do all of it from the curb or from your driveway, which is pretty awesome. So the big program is the Truckee Fire Curbside Pickup Program. This is really intended for all that woody biomass. So shrubs, tree limbs, and trees up to 8 inches in diameter. You neatly stack that material next to the roadway. You make a request online. We come and pick it up within 2 weeks. So it's a really great program to help get that material out of there. The other one is our 6-yard dumpster rebate. This is the program where residents call Tahoe Truckee Sierra Disposal, request a 6-yard green waste dumpster. They deliver it at your house for a week. You fill it up with green waste, pay for it, and then you submit a really easy rebate form back to us. And the change we made for this year is that we're now rebating 75% of that dumpster. It used to be $75. Town of Truckee residents, you can use this once per property. Placer County and Nevada County, those unincorporated residents, you can use this 6-yard dumpster twice now this season. So hopefully that helps, as you all don't have those Town of Truckee green carts. So digging right into that, if you live in the Town of Truckee, you can get up to 3 of those green lid yard waste carts. Those go out every other week opposite of recycling. One thing I want to just mention is that the 6-yard dumpster and the green carts, they're really, really good for that smaller material. Pine needles, pine cones, twigs, sticks, and maybe some of that dirtier green waste, yard trimmings, recent prunings. It's really good to use the small stuff for that, and then use that curbside pickup program for all that larger stuff that doesn't fit as well in the dumpsters and carts. The other 2 options that are all available are the 2 self-haul options. So one of those is that every resident, regardless of where you live, you get 6 yards of free green waste disposal if you haul it down to the Eastern Regional Landfill on Cabin Creek. Or at one of these 3 drop-off events, you can bring your green waste to the event as many times as you want and get that green waste dropped off that way. So we have one event coming up soon in Tahoe Donner on May 30th, and then there'll be a June 28th and July 11th events at the Truckee Rodeo Grounds. All right, so if you've been doing a lot of defensible space work and now you're ready to really get into some home hardening upgrades, or maybe you're doing both at the same time, this slide is for you. So this year we increased our rebate amount from $500 up to $2,000. And you can use this for any home hardening upgrades. So some of the priorities that we see are fences that are connected to the home, right? Replacing that first 5 feet of wooden fences or gates with a non-combustible option. Upgrading vents, so from whatever existing vent screening you have to an 1/8 inch vent. We're really focusing in on attic vents and crawl space vents, so those vents that would actually potentially allow embers to enter your home. But then, of course, it comes down to decks, eaves, windows, siding, roofing. This home hardening rebate can really be used for everything. So we have a whole great website for this called truckeefire.org/harden your home. The process for this is pretty easy. You schedule a full access defensible space evaluation with us, meet face to face with one of our inspectors, get that comprehensive home hardening and defensible space inspection, and then that sets you up to be able to either DIY or reach out to a contractor to do anything that's captured on your report. So that could be anything from the top down, right? Roof, siding, windows, vents, all the way into the first 5 feet around your house. So upgrading from, either combustible mulch like wood chips or bark and upgrading to a hardscaping like rock. We really want to keep this program available for anything that improves that ember resistance to your home and complements all of your defensible space work. New for this year, we're going to have a reflective address sign program. This one's really cool. I think we've already got almost 50 of these signs out this community or to this community just this year. So property owners can get one free reflective address sign. Now, this is really important. You can use this sign on your house, or if you already have an address sign on your house, you could place this sign closer to the street. And this is really to help improve visibility for emergency responders. The only catch with this program is that you either need to get it during a defensible space inspection or at an in-person event. So this sign is our way of showing that you've met face-to-face with the fire district, you understand the importance of defensible space and home hardening, and you're showing that you've engaged with us. So if you're scheduling an inspection or if you meet with us during our curbside inspections when we're in your community, talk to our inspectors, make sure you get a sign if you're interested in one, or come out to Truckee Day, Truckee Thursdays. We'll be at the fire station every Truckee Thursdays. We'll be at most Truckee farmers markets this summer. And then we're going to be at somewhere between 20 and 30 Firewise events that you all plan and attend as well. A new program that we don't quite yet have perfectly dialed, but we're going to be releasing this July is our Dead Tree Fund. So like I said, this will be our first year piloting this, but Truckee Fire does recognize how expensive dead trees are to remove. And so we're going to be working kind of through a two-lane process. One is that if you own a property and live here and you need the assistance to remove trees, we're going to create an easy pathway for a rebate. So you would use a tree service provider, one that could be off our form or another licensed professional, take care of the dead tree, and then submit back a rebate for us for some level of financial assistance. And then if you're someone that is truly needy on financial assistance, so you qualify for some level of area mean income, low income, you're on a fixed budget, you live here, you own your property, you really need help. We want to try to find a pathway to help just take that financial burden off and pay for that whole dead tree removal. So we'll be getting this program out to the community as we switch fiscal years in July. But we're excited to get this one out there, help make a dent in the issue with dead trees, and help let our communities focus on maybe Zone 0 or other home hardening issues that they have, and let us help with some of these really expensive dead trees that also pose community hazards. All right, one other really cool feel-good program that we have that we're just really getting started and have made some good progress with is partnering up with our school district, with Sierra Watershed Education Partnerships and the fire district to provide some defensible space assistance to properties that need help. So if you're someone that needs financial assistance, you're elderly, you're disabled, you're on a fixed income, you just need help getting this defensible space work done, reach out to our defensible space team to see if we can get you through the process to qualify, or to nominate a neighbor, right? If you know someone nearby that just needs the help, don't be shy, reach out to us, let us know who they are. We can go knock on their door, talk to them. It's a really cool program that we get into our school system. We educate our kids on defensible space, on forest management, a little bit on wildfire, And then we get them out there through their service learning requirements to go get some volunteerism to help us fill 1 or 2 dumpsters and make a property much, much cleaner and more defendable than it was before we started. All right, that's the major wrap on the defensible space work planning and a lot of the programs we have available. But before we finish, I want to take some opportunities to hit another few topics that are closely related. So as you all are doing your individual defensible space work on your property, the fire district and many of our partner agencies are working on larger forest management projects. And those might be right inside of a community, that critical fuel break near a community, or even out in our forest working on bigger wildfire forest health resilience projects. So the 3 big projects that we started last year that are going to be wrapping up this year are 100 acres of fuel reduction just north of Armstrong Tract, in between Armstrong Tract and Tahoe Donner, 83 acres right in the middle of Sierra Meadows, and then 147-acre roadside fuel break on the east side of our fire district off of Martis Peak Roads. That's just east of Glenshire. Some big projects that we have going on, and I'm excited to announce as we head into 2025, is that we're going to be working on a really big project in the Glenshire area. This is going to be Canyon Springs and Glenshire to Hurstdale fuel reduction. This is going to be about a 500-acre forest health and fuel reduction project just east of Glenshire. And it's really going to continue all the way down to Hurstdale, really taking care of that steep Glenshire Drive egress, right? One of the 2 ways out of Glenshire to make sure that we get that evacuation corridor right, reduce fuels, and don't have an issue there. We also are getting ready to launch an $8 million grant-funded project. So our forester and a lot of our partners were able to pull down an $8 million project, including a $7 million grant from CAL FIRE that's going to be treating almost 2,700 acres of forests. And these are all forests just outside of our community. So really looking on some of that larger forest health resilience that ties really well into all the work that we're doing from the inside out in our communities. We also have quite a few other large projects in planning that we hope to implement in the next 2 to 3 years. And that would be the whole hillside in central Truckee, just south of Coyote Moon Golf Course and kind of above that hill from the hospital where we had that 3-acre Donner Pass fire last year, as well as connecting the progress that the Forest Service had back into our community. So we'd really like to get the private lands back into a better state from that Jackass Point trail system area all the way into Coldstream and the Deerfield or Save Mart Shopping Center. If you're interested in any more of our projects, check out our website, truckeefire.org/projects. There's been a ton of work done. So this map in front of you, the green is a lot of project areas that have been completed by various partners in the last 5 to 10 years. Orange is everything that's currently in implementation phase by everything from federal partners. If you're looking on the Highway 89 South Corridor, we have the Sierra Meadows project in orange, as well as that Martis Peak project we talk as well. The purple is all the projects that we have planned and with secured funding to be implemented over the next 3 years. So a lot of projects popping up all over our fire district and surrounding many of our communities. They're going to get us into a much, much better place than we have been. Another cool program, this one's really intended for our large property owners or fire-wise communities that can pull together various HOA or small properties, is our Community Wildfire Prevention Grant. We have this available every single year. We received 9 applications this year. This application period closed the beginning of May. And it's pretty cool. We had made $500,000 available to our community, and we received over $1.5 million in application asks. So even here in Truckee, we have a competitive little local block grant program, but we're really excited about the projects that we receive every year, having these conversations and building more capacity through our community to get more work done than ever before. Here is maybe the importance, right? I really want to drive home the forest densification issue and why we're doing all this work as a community. As this picture here, you'll see direction of fire spread was from the left side of the screen towards the right side of the screen. And in these areas where we've let this fuel accumulation just become completely overgrown and dense and well connected, you can see that we're not left with anything, right? We're left with about 100% mortality of trees, all the surface fuels, all the shrubs. This is going to take arguably hundreds of years to recover back to the state that it was before it was lost. Whereas you cross this road and you enter into a treatment area, so an area where forest management and fuel reduction work has been completed. And you see that when it first entered, right, the heat and the flame length that was coming off, this timber burning on the other side of the road, it definitely took a while, right? It maybe took 200 feet or more for the fire severity to reduce back down to a surface fire below the trees, but it worked. You get into these treatment areas, you run out of that surface fuel driving fire behavior. The fire quite literally lays back down on the ground. It starts chewing through the shrubs and the surface fuels, but doesn't connect up through the ladders up into the canopies of the trees. And as you can see here, we got homes on the north and on the east that were then protected by proper forest management and treatments. And we have another great picture here from the 2021 bootleg fire, where again, the north side of this photo is all untreated, pretty much full loss of the forest. The area in the middle, this green belt, had the perfect enchilada of treatments completed, right? It had a forest thinning, followed up by a maintenance prescribed burn activity. And then even as it shifted out of that into the areas that were, maybe just thinned only, even that area saw a little bit more damages, but just really comes back in with why we're trying to get our forests back to a resilient state and why we're using our tools to move fast with these thinning efforts, and then hoping to bring prescribed fire back into our mix to meet that whole ecological perspective of thinned and prescribed burned. Got a couple more slides before I can close here, but I have to go with that we will be going into our Truckee area campfire and barbecue burn later this summer. Typically, this goes into effect by the 4th of July, sometimes as early as June. Keep in mind when we go into this area, the only thing that's permissible is propane or natural gas fire pits, whether they're portable or built in, and then propane, natural gas, and pellet smoker barbecues. Once we go into this burn ban, any form of wood, charcoal, or other solid fuel is prohibited for the remainder of the fire season. And if we have one of those red flag warnings where weather is really, really severe and aligned with fire danger, then we ask that you please do not use any of these. So to close this one out, I really want to use a great framework that I hope most people on this call have heard, but that is ready, set, go. So being ready means having your 100 feet of defensible space and your home hardening done. You've really understood what needs to be done. You've taken on that work. You've thought about protecting your home and making sure that your home and your property is set up to be resilient. That is the readiness. Getting set is making sure your family is aware of what it means to be set for an evacuation. So making sure your family has thought about evacuating during a fire, just like you think about driving through a blizzard over the pass to get to the other side of the state. The other part of that is planning. What, how, who, and when. Create your own wildfire action plan and evacuation plan. Just like you would do in the winter, right, with extra boots and warm clothes and some water, make sure you have an emergency kit for evacuation as well. Maybe a clean set of cotton-based clothing, any sort of medications, emergency contacts, or other materials you need. And make sure your family knows how to communicate in case you're in different areas during a fire evacuation. Being ready to go is, you've done your defensible space, you've done your home hardening, you've had the conversation, you've set yourself up for success, is making sure that you have that plan of action, making sure you have like that 2-minute plan. You get an emergency order and you have to leave right now, or maybe that 5 to 30-minute plan. You get an evacuation warning. You can button up the inside and outside of your house a little bit more, gather some important belongings, and then leave. The important thing is if you're worried about needing more time or worried about what could happen during a fire, leave early. Set yourself up for success and leave earlier. There's a lot of great resources on being ready, being set, and being prepared to go. So just wanted to use this as a framework. With that, I wanted to say thank you, Truckee, from the whole Wildfire Prevention Division and Defensible Space team, and leave you with this checklist that I hope you all received in the mail with our update as well. But this is the checklist that we really want to see people doing as we head into fire season, is focusing number 1 on zone 0. So clearing that first 5 feet around their structure, managing their defensible space, working on address visibility. Number 4, connecting with Truckee Fire, understanding that comprehensive defensible space and home hardening checklist that you can work on. And then the last step, making sure you talk with your neighbors, share this info, connect with your neighbors, work together to create a wildfire resilient Truckee. And if you haven't done so, go to TahoeAlerts.com and make sure you're signed up for emergency alerts so we can have a safe wildfire season. With that, I am going to turn it back over to Brittany and Maria to work through some Q&A with you all. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric, for that super awesome and informative presentation. We have had a few questions in the chat that I have answered along the way. If you do have additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or up on the top of your screen, you should see a little hand emoji that says raise. You can raise your hand by clicking that button, and Maria or I can call on you to go ahead and ask your question. All right, I see John Henry has his hand raised. So John, I will go ahead and allow you to turn on your mic. Your mic should be good to go. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. John Henry Byer, you're allowed to speak from our end. John, if that's not working for you, you can always type your question in the chat. In the meantime, I will go ahead and allow the microphone for Lupe Nelson. Lupe, you should be available to speak once you click unmute from your end.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. I did schedule an inspection for our property, but I'm wondering, there is a slope in front of our house across, we're in the Armstrong track. And will the person that comes out for the inspection be able to tell us if what's there is okay? Because we have so many trees on that slope. And I've already gone to the building department and have some mapping on it. And they said that maybe that's the town of Truckee's responsibility. So in the end, really, my question is can we get some information from the person who comes to say, yeah, you know, these trees are too close together and something might be cleaned up?
Can you clarify whether this slope is your property or not your property?
It's not our property. It's across from Sierra, in between Sierra and Richards. So the property sits on up from Richards, which is the slope that goes up onto Sierra and then continues up above us.
So we would not be able to give any contact information for who owns that property. However, if you go to the county assessor's office, you can certainly with relative ease be able to figure out who does own that property.
I did. So I guess my question is, um, can the person who comes out say those trees are too close together, or can someone answer the question of if there's a group of trees, is there like supposed to be 5 feet between trees or 6 feet?
Yeah, when we meet with you on site on your property, we can definitely talk through all of those items.
Okay, that's all. That's all. I just want to get some direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining today. All right, I am scrolling back down to view some of the comments. So Mike Moore asked, does the campground at Donner Lake have exemption to fires? I frequently see huge wood fires going in fire pits. Yeah, so within the burn ban, there are a few different types of entities that can have exemptions. And those are typically state and federal campgrounds. And so that campground would have an exemption, and they are required to follow guidelines in association with the exemption that they specifically request. Good question, Mike. Are you able to speak more about the home hardening rebate program? Yeah, what I will do is, Teresa, I will respond to your comment with a direct link to our home hardening page. In general, it should be a relatively quick and easy process to determine your eligibility and to be eligible. Really, the main thing that you need to have is a full access defensible space inspection within the past 2 years from Truckee Fire or Tahoe Donner. And then once we are able to get that for you, we will help you to identify some high priority options for you to help make your home more resilient to wildfire. You do have to have compliance in zone 0, so that first 5 feet around your structure, because home hardening and defensible space do go hand in hand. But there are the ins and outs of what home hardening is and various different types of resources on that website that I just tagged underneath your comment. If you have any specific question, feel free to comment that as well. Bill, hopefully that can help you as well. Dan is asking a question. Will a building permit be required to obtain the $2,000 hardening rebate? Ultimately, it is up to you to determine if you will need a building permit or not. And so depending on where you live, what HOA, what county, that is something that you will have to do the research on prior to making those upgrades. And we do have information regarding who to reach out to for that on that home hardening page on our website as well. Let's see, Pyra. We do have a list of service providers that have been through a virtual training with Truckee Fire, and this is updated on an annual basis. And so I will go ahead and link to that resource right underneath your comment. It is available on our website, truckeefire.org. Underneath wildfire prevention, click defensible space, scroll all the way to the bottom under defensible space resources. How can we get a copy of the PowerPoint so we can get the contact information on various slides? The video recording of this presentation will be available on our website by the end of the day tomorrow. So you'll be able to view them that way. We've thinned a number of trees but need help to remove the large trunks. Is there any help available for that? Truckee Fire does not explicitly have any programs to assist in the removal of trunks if they are still standing within the ground. However, our curbside green waste pickup program, once they are cut, if they are less than 8 inches in diameter, which is approximately the width from thumb to pinky or the shaka sign, that is typically about 8 inches in diameter on most people. And so if they are that size or smaller, you would be able to put them out on the curb for curbside pickup. Otherwise, you could self-haul to Eastern Regional Landfill, or you would be able to put them in a green waste dumpster. And I believe, yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Maria.
In terms of questions, it looks like our next question comes from Chase Cambron. So Chase, I'm going to allow your microphone, and if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Hello?
hear you.
Okay, great. So one question regarding the oh, I just forgot the term. I had an inspection last year. I didn't have a finding for my vents due to the fact that it was a fine mesh screening, but I wasn't comfortable, so I wanted to upgrade to Vulcan vents, which I went ahead and purchased. Based on the fact that I didn't have a finding, but I wanted to upgrade the home hardening. Does that still qualify for the funds?
Yeah, while the 1/8 inch mesh screening is certainly an acceptable mitigation, we certainly do appreciate and recommend doing that extra upgrade to the more protective vents. So if you want to send us an email, and we'll work with you with your report and maybe get an inspector out just to update your report so that you are able to submit a reimbursement request for that upgrade.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Of course. Next up is Amy. Amy, I'm going to go ahead and allow your mic if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you all for doing this, first of all, and for all the hard work and the information. Our neighborhood was inspected last year, which is great. It was at the end of the season, so it was kind of a little late. We were in the fall and too late to kind of get things going before the winter hit us. But so naturally, we're trying to figure out what we can do this summer. Some things we can do, which is great. But naturally, there's also going to be some very hard and very expensive things that showed up on our list. So replace the entire wraparound deck. One item. Replace your siding. Another item. So I just wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously those things need to get done, but they're really, really expensive. And so, I guess that has to get done in order to kind of be in full compliance. So what's the perspective on this? How, I'd just like to hear, what your thoughts are about that, because we'd love to get in compliance. And I've set up a meeting to try and understand the other things. But the third question, or the question on that, the other question would be just, do we want to re-inspect? I guess once we've done some stuff, we should bring you back out, I guess. And that means scheduling another visit. So at least we can check off the items we can get done. So if you could confirm that, but obviously I'm more worried about just the really hard, expensive things. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, Amy. And I'm glad you asked that question, because it gives us an opportunity to clarify a couple things that are a common misunderstanding, and we do our best to make this as clear as possible, which is that the defensible space findings on your report are what is required in order to be compliant. The home hardening findings on your report are informative, and with some of those findings, we are recommending that you do the upgrades. For example, a wooden fence that's near the structure, or vinyl gutters, for example. But we certainly recognize that stuff like, the material of your siding or of your deck is the project in and of itself is prohibitive. What we're really trying to bring to your attention there is that you have vulnerable features inherent within your structure, and we are encouraging you to do additional defensible space, or really zero in on the defensible space around those features in order to protect it. If we all lived in concrete bunkers, we wouldn't need to do very much to mitigate the risks to our structure. But it's important for each homeowner to be aware of these more vulnerable features of their structures in order to be able to prioritize and protect them accordingly. So to answer your questions, I hope, no, you do not need to complete those home hardening changes in order to have a compliant report. And yes, we certainly encourage you to schedule an inspection when you'll be on the property. The inspector can talk through what you have been able to do and help you prioritize any additional items that you're still trying to figure out how to tackle. Does that answer your question, Amy?
Yes, thank you. Can you still hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
that's very helpful. That's very illuminated. I didn't understand that. So that to play that back, we'll meet with the inspector. They'll give us some more ideas, but it sounds like, for example, if we have a wraparound deck, it's sort of like FYI. So obviously, if you're going to replace your deck, this is the FYI in the report is, then you would want to replace it with something that's not wood. So that's like what you're trying to do is teach the homeowner, if you have to replace siding or you're planning some remodeling, but we don't have to go out and replace our siding. And
Correct.
what you're also saying is that you might want to think about, wow, rocks underneath the, out 5 feet, that's an investment that would help you because you have this wraparound deck. I think those are the kinds of ideas that you're trying to get at, right? Obviously, we'll get that information. And then I think you're saying once we do the work, we can bring them back out and we can get ourselves in compliance.
Amy, I don't know if we planted you in the audience, but you said that better than I could have. So thank you. And I hope that was a good takeaway for others that are listening and may have had similar confusion from our report. We do our best to provide, clarifying language on the report. And over the past 3 years, we have tried to adapt the language to make it clearer as to, what our directive is. So we hear you and we take that feedback, and it's thanks to residents like Amy and you guys talking to your neighbors that help us get the messaging out. I'm going to go on to our next hand up, which is Craig. Craig, I've allowed your microphone, and if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi there, thank you all. Just a quick question on the burn permits. Is it determined seasonally based on the weather when you cut that season off, and have you already picked a date to cut it off? Burning.
Great question. The burn ban, which ends all burn permits, which I think is what you're asking about, right? The burn ban is not a set date, but it is usually determined by the fire agencies in the region in conjunction with CAL FIRE. And as far as I know, there is not a date picked yet.
So it is determined.
We usually announce it as soon as we know, but yes, it's determined seasonally based on all of, fire weather conditions and other factors, like it's pretty much always going to be in place before July 4th weekend.
Thank you. Perfect.
Of course. Thanks, Craig. Our next question is going to be from Brett. Brett S. I have allowed your microphone. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, then you can ask your question.
Hey, good afternoon. So I help my dad maintain his property up at Soda Springs, and I'm not the registered property owner, but I have been the contact person in the past. Can I schedule a full access defensible space inspection and meet with the inspector, or does it have to be the registered property owner?
Especially if you are the one doing the work, then we're happy to meet with you. We might reach out to you if your name doesn't match the county records for ownership on the property. We might reach out to you to confirm your relationship, or ask that your father confirm to us that we can meet with you for that purpose. But we are happy to meet with you. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. Let's see what other hands I have up here. Okay, Jim White. I'm going to allow your microphone and you can go ahead and ask your question by unmuting yourself. Jim White, if you are with us, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question. Jim, we're going to give you a minute to figure out your mic situation there. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to Kathy Neuberger with SLPOA, Serene Lakes Property Owners Association. Kathy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Kathy Neuberger, if you are able to unmute your microphone, then you can go ahead and ask your question. And same thing for Jim White. We'll see who figures it out first. If you go up to the control panel of your screen, you'll see a picture of a mic with a slash through it. And if you click on that, it should unmute your microphone. Brittany, do we have any questions in the Q&A that we want to read aloud?
Sure. I have been working through to answer some as you have been taking live questions. But I can take a few from AW. AW asked, if I had an inspection in 2023, can I ask for another or do I have to wait? You can absolutely request a defensible space inspection at any time, no matter how long ago you had your last inspection with us. So truckeefire.org under wildfire prevention, click defensible space, and you can request an inspection right there. We would be more than happy to once again walk and talk with you on your property about defensible space, home hardening. You do not have to wait any certain amount of time. So feel free to go ahead and request that. The home hardening rebate does not apply to new construction. This was a question from Andrea McStalker. They're only for upgrades to existing homes. That is a really great question. Thomas Wade, I believe I responded to one of your questions a few minutes ago. I also see that you asked, will the California Fair Plan reduce fire premiums with Truckee Fire Defensible Space? We are not associated with the California Fair Plan. Therefore, that is not something that I am able to guarantee. Defensible space is state law and it has been for quite some time. Maria, you might have something additional to add.
Yeah, our inspections are obviously just confirming what the condition of your property is. We do identify a number of resilient home structure features, which for many insurance companies now are criteria for receiving a discount. So we can actually, if you go to truckeefire.org, let me double check, give you the exact right website. California Safer from Wildfires is a program of the California Department of Insurance. They have required that insurance providers consider certain mitigations in determining their premiums and rates. So while you are not necessarily guaranteed a discount based on certain mitigations, it is now required that the providers take that into consideration. And our understanding is that the FAIR plan does follow that, and it basically groups together certain mitigations. So once you have achieved a certain set of mitigations, then you become eligible for that discount. Another important discount that is actually probably a lot quicker for many of you to obtain are 2 community level discounts. One is, and again, this is for homeowners insurance discounts. If you are in what's called a fire risk reduction community, then you are eligible for you should be eligible for a discount on your insurance. The Truckee Fire District is on the fire risk reduction community list. So that eligibility is something you can check the box for. And being in a FireWise community is also a consideration in your homeowner's insurance discounts. And 85% of our structures within the district are within FireWise communities. So I'm going to pop a couple of websites into the Q&A and we'll pin them to the top so that you guys can access those. But all of this information is available on the Truckee Fire website. We keep telling you guys to go there. There's so much information. We understand that it might be a little overwhelming, but if you're looking for some information, it's probably on our website. So we'll get those in before the end of the webinar, and we'll make sure that those links are also available for on the DSpace page when you come back to look at the recording or the PowerPoint slides. It looks like we still have a hand up from Kathy Neuberger, but it doesn't look like she's been able to unmute her mic.
I can go ahead and speak to Kathy's question. She was able to get it in the Q&A. Kathy asked if there are any other acceptable ways of having firewood on decks other than fireproof tarps. Kathy, really the best way to store firewood is at least 30 feet from any structures. When we're not using firewood in the summertime, we really don't want to be storing it on our decks, under our decks, really anywhere close to our structure, because that is a really significant fuel source. One of Eric's favorite statistics is that 1 cord of firewood can burn at the same BTUs as 130 gallons of gasoline. So a lot of people might store a cord of firewood out on their deck. However, what they would not store is 130 gallons of gasoline there. So really, we want that to be at least 30 feet from any structure is the best way to be storing that. Now, we do recognize that for some folks that is not possible. And so that next best thing is if you have to have it on your deck during fire season, then you really do want to ensure that it is entirely enclosed with one of those fireproof tarps. I'm not seeing any other questions or hands up at this current time. Oh, we might have just had a question pop up. We are just about 9 minutes over here. So for anyone that needs to get off, we definitely want to be respectful of your time. We greatly appreciate your attendance to this webinar today. You can always reach out to us at the following email, DSpace, D as in dog, SPACE at truckeefire.org. You can also always give the Wildfire Prevention Division a call at 530-582-7850. We are extension 2, and you can get to one of our wonderful wildfire prevention specialists to get your questions answered. Sure. I am looking at a few other questions in the chat.
We also have a hand up again from Robert Murray. Robert, I'm going to allow your microphone and you can go ahead and ask your question. I'll need you to unmute your microphone and then you can go ahead and ask your question.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Robert.
All right, we have liftoff. Thank you. I just have a quick question. We closed on purchase of a place up in Soda Springs in November. And as part of the close, we had to comply with CAL FIRE was involved, the county was involved in defensible space, and they did quite a bit of cutting. So my question is, are we now compliant for the near future? And if so, for how long?
What I understood is that you recently purchased a property and that CAL FIRE and the county did some tree cutting work.
Well, we had a private person do the work, and she cut a number of trees down, and in compliance with a review that was completed by, I believe the woman was with CAL FIRE, or maybe she was with the county. In any case, it was a fairly extensive list, and she select a number of trees and in ground growth and so forth, and it was all cleared out. And so in order to close escrow, she then signed off. So do we need to do further defensible space clearing?
A great question. It sounds like you had the initial inspection and got the work done, but maybe
Correct.
need the follow-up inspection to confirm that the work was done. So in order to fulfill those requirements, we need to have an inspection on file with Truckee Fire that shows compliant. So if you want to send an email to us with the address of the lot, if it's undeveloped, also stick the APN number in there, and we'll take a look at it and get you sorted out as to what next steps might be, or if you're
So
all clear.
An email to you folks, huh?
Yep, dspace@truckeefire.org.
Dspace. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks, Robert.
Robert, I will go ahead and pop in for a second and just add a bit to what Maria just said. Once you do the bulk defensible space work, then that is a really great effort to reach that compliance. However, maintenance is always necessary. Every year, pine trees shed about 1/3 of their pine needles. And so that maintenance for raking those pine needles and maybe trimming back shrubs, that is typically necessary on an annual basis. But it sounds like you all are well on your way to a beautifully compliant property outside of this, just those annual efforts to mitigate and continue to maintain that beautiful defensible space work.
There are a lot of great questions coming up with some specific information about home hardening, specific vulnerable or resilient features. And I would encourage anyone with questions that are specific to your property to schedule an inspection with our inspectors. You will have the undivided attention for 30 to 40 minutes of one of our inspectors to walk and talk with you on your property, point out opportunities for improvement, whether they be within the context of the defensible space requirements or the home hardening mitigation recommendations. And again, you can do that at truckeefire.org/dspace, and you'll click the button to request a general defensible space inspection. You'll have the opportunity, just like you're scheduling a dentist appointment, but it's much more fun than that, to schedule a specific date and time, and our inspector will come and meet you on the property. I think we're going to wrap it up there. If you have specific questions that we didn't answer, feel free to send us an email. But again, we encourage you to schedule an inspection to get some face time with an inspector and get all of your questions answered. With that, thanks for the tag team, Brittany, on the Q&A. And we'll see you guys out in the community. Thank you for being committed to defensible space and for helping make Truckee fire resilient.